Well, we're halfway through day 2 of the Teachers Matter Summit, and it is my great pleasure to welcome Eric Frankenheim to the team, to the presenting team, to be able to suggest and give you some wonderful ideas from your classroom. So hi, Eric.
Kia ora, Karen. How are you?
I am stunningly fantastic because this conference, this summit has just been rocking. We've had so many amazing presenters, and I know that the audience are in for a real treat right now.
Well, I hope so, yes.
Absolutely. So if you want to know more about Eric, his bio is down below and you can read all of that. But look, his heart for teaching and learning and making sure our kids are great thinkers is in exactly the right place. So I want to find out, before we launch into all your content, Eric, if you were to have a superpower, what would you choose? Any superpower in the world, what would you choose and why?
You make me think immediately of a question I was asked back in 1977 when I was doing some teacher training. And this principal said to me, "Excuse me, why are we learning this?" And I looked at him and I said, "Oh, because it's in the exams." And he said, "Okay, I'm happy." And he carried on, but it was a horribly inadequate response. And I'm embarrassed about the question. I only understood it many years later when I migrated to this wonderful country called Australia. And really, what people are looking for is what's in it for them. And not in a selfish way, but of what value. And what I really try to do now is to explain with every lesson that there might be one or two things that could be valuable for the next week or year, but particularly when they're adults. So what's in it for them? And I often say I teach critical thinking, which really means decision-making skills, because I, as a father of 3 and a grandfather of 8, I want to keep people out of jail. And I mean by real jail, by making terrible decisions, but also a metaphoric jail, by getting into debt, by buying bling that gets you into all sort of financial troubles, things that are not necessary, and saying words which are cruel and thoughtless, because once you've said the word, you can't take them back. So my superpower, okay, here it goes. I would love to have the ability, if I'm standing in front of a class of 30 children, and this is not going to happen, but to be able to see exactly into their minds, what they value. Because if I could see it for all of them and not, trying to make the assumption myself that I see this as being a great value for this reason, if I had that superpower, I believe that my lessons would really hook them in, would engage them more and more and more, and they'd say, "Aha, why am I learning this? I understand." That's my superpower, but I don't have it.
That would be a great superpower, to really be able to hook each individual learner with what is relevant to them. So
absolutely.
One that I know that you're working towards. So that is fantastic. Thank you very much.
All right.
Eric, I know that you're such a passionate teacher, and when it comes to being a teacher and a consultant and someone who is in the classroom and wanting to work with teachers and have been doing that for so long, what is it? Why is it that you're so passionate and want to engage with these thinking tools?
Okay, I'm going to sound like I repeat myself, but I always say this. I want to keep people out of trouble, and because we have no real understanding how lucky we are to be living at this time, and especially where I do, where you do, and so on. And too many people don't appreciate that. So I want to show that education, I was a history teacher, and somebody said, "Surely, weren't you a teacher? I thought you were a teacher of children." I said, "Okay, you're right, absolutely right." So I teach history to children, and I just want to give them tools that when they look at the material, they can process that material, they can manage the material, and may I say, even own that material. So if they're using something like an extended PCQ and they're examining, discussing, and evaluating, and whatever it might be, it could be a marketing plan, it could be a poem, a piece of art, as we once did with a scream, Munch's scream. I'll never forget that lesson. It was incredible, because everything that was on the split Y chart came from these grade 12 children. And that's all I want to do, is I want to give them the tool, because you can go to Wikipedia for the information, or a textbook. We used to have textbooks in Africa, and maybe earlier here when I taught in Rockhampton, I can't remember. But knowledge is something, but it's what you do with that knowledge. That's so important. So that's what I love, thinking tools. And the cooperative tools is where I keep quiet, because I've often said the best learning takes place when the teacher is quiet. But it depends on a good question, which has a clear verb. It depends on a thinking tool, such as a round robin, think, pair, share, decision-making matrix, a cognitive tool, and a clear time frame. Now, maybe later we will see a little picture if I share the screen, because I always say to teachers, if you use these tools, you can design a question in 10 seconds. Really, I want you to discuss your holidays by using a SWOT analysis. Now, that's going to take the kids maybe 15 minutes, and you can drink an awful lot of coffee in that time. Yeah, because we're quiet. And then a teacher sent me from Newcastle years ago, 22 years ago, a picture that she'd got somebody take of her sitting in a chair, not only with a cup of coffee, but with the Daily Telegraph. And all these kids were on the floor having no idea what she was doing, because they were so engaged. And tools, thinking tools, engage the thinking skill. That's what I want to talk about, yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. Eric, look, you're so passionate in what you know and what you want to share with us. I just want to let you know that you are bumping your computer, so it looks like there's a mini earthquake going on. Well,
we're quite close to New Zealand, and we're getting the after effects here possibly, but thank you for that. I'll keep my hands on my head in future.
No, it's all right. I just want to let people know, because it's sort of like, it's all good. It's the passion you have, so it's fantastic. Well, what's the difference between a template and a graphic organizer and a thinking tool?
No, there's no difference. They're just three different phrases.
Okay. So when you're looking at for resources, it all means the same thing.
Well, a graphic, graphos, to write. So it's a piece of paper that has lines on which you can write, and it prompts you where to write. I call them thinking tool templates as well. My little thinking tool templates, my bundle is, I call them thinking tool templates. And what was the other one? Yeah, they're thinking tools. And, I'll explain that in a minute. I think when we get to question number 2, yeah.
That's great. What I forgot to tell people was at the beginning that you are the author of this incredible book. And how many editions is it up to now?
It's actually 30. Sorry, well, that's the 10th. And if I may say, here's the 11th edition. And I decided to change the cover, and that gorgeous girl there is my granddaughter, Grace, born on my birthday. So we just decided to change the cover. Yeah. So it's 30,000 in English, and oh, there we go. There's the 5,000 in Mandarin, but I've never seen a cent of that.
It's often the way in China, isn't it?
Well, it's not China. It might be just the publisher who's maybe sending it to me one day, but I've actually got a copy of it where only my name and the title is in English. The rest is all in Mandarin. Oh. Yeah, quite correctly so.
It's always very exciting when you see your book in another language. I've had one of mine in Vietnamese.
Oh, yes.
So you look at it going, I have no idea what this says. You just hope that the translation is accurate.
Yes, I'm sure it is. Yeah.
So, well, tell us a little bit more about how you use these thinking tools, please.
All right, if I may just share my screen with you.
Certainly.
All right, and we go here. And there we go. There's the cartoon I made of this photograph that the teacher sent me. So I say the best learning takes place when the teacher is quiet. And it depends on a clear question that must have a task verb. It must. And then a tool, a strategy, a thinking tool, you see a strategy could be a round robin or something like that. So that's not a cognitive tool, that's a cooperative tool. And you tell them you've got 5 minutes or 20 minutes or so on. But this is the important thing for teachers, if I may say. I work quite a lot now in the corporate world, more so than I work in schools, and they're fascinated by Bloom's. Now, it doesn't have to be just Bloom. It could be Solo, it could be Marzano, it could be any framework. But let's just talk English, which is my second language, by the way. So the thinking skills, why are we learning, as that teacher said to me, those are the verbs. And if you look at any assessment, the Australian curriculum, your curriculum, New Zealand curriculum, South Africa, where I was just 2 months ago doing a bit of teaching in Natal, everything is predicated by the verb. So there, and I always put verbs in green when I'm teaching, with a PowerPoint, because green is for go. So those are the skills. But asking people to explain something and say, here's paper and a pen, off you go, is no guarantee it's going to happen. But if you give them a tool, like we're using Zoom to communicate, right? That is the how. As I often say, my favorite word apart from Shiraz is how. And how can I do it? And they've got graphic organizers, templates. So for explain, for example, I would use the cause effect map. And I used this just, I think, on Thursday with the some WA principals when we were looking at something, the importance of high morale in an organization or a school. And if we go now to this framework, when you say, what are thinking tools? That is from page, I think, 15 of my book. I've changed the pictures because I used to have an encyclopedia and a dictionary and a how-to manual. Yes. Nobody knows what those are. So I've got I for information kiosk to remember. I will act like an aha bubble to show I and the kids can understand. I will act like a formula to apply things I learn. I will act like a microscope to analyze. Excuse me. It's not what you think it is, that little cough. Analysis is the Greek for to pull to pieces, to find intimately what's going on, connections. Evaluate, the Greek word kritikos is to judge, to evaluate. The scales of justice. And then finally, wow, that's not aha, that's the wow, light bulb moments, you know, where you suddenly realize something. So the left-hand column are the verbs. The second column, as you can see, is the broad why. So the first two are the whys. Then the third column is the thinking, the sentence, the actual question or activity. And the fourth column, as I said, my favorite word apart from Shiraz is how. And that's where you'll get the alpha ladders, the pros, cons, questions, you know, decision-making matrix, and so on. So as teachers, when we're doing assessment, we must start with the verb. I don't say the verb has to be the first word in the sentence, but we have to ask, why are we asking this question? And a question could have more than one verb. So that's where you take your verbs from. And then the how is the template, the graphic organizer, but it's the scaffold, the ladder. I'll show you a ladder soon that helps people achieve what they want.
Yeah.
And then you asked me, would you like me to carry on with this here?
Yeah, go.
So then you said to me, how do graphic organizers, all these thinking tools, templates, help or assist with thinking? Now, the example I've given here is, if I was to say to you, discuss your life as a teacher, it's not a bad question because it has got a clear verb. But again, there's no guarantee that anybody would know how to react. Some might just react from an emotional point of view. I don't know. Some might just listening without realizing they're not really discussing something, right? But so what I say is, and people can get this framework free of charge from my website. It's in color. You can make as many copies. I don't mind. And if you laminate them, they'll last longer than my liver, in fact. They'll last forever. But if you start with this framework, right, at the top of the framework, I've just blown up. Can you see at the top very clearly now? There are 4 columns. The first 2 are why. One is the micro why, the verb, the specific task verb. The second why is the broad area. So if I ask you to discuss, it's going to be analyze. Then the third sentence, it's in all the books I've made, has got sentence starters, just a few. And the fourth one is my Shiraz column. That's where all the tools are. So if we're looking at analyze, which this question is, discuss your life as a teacher. Can you see that I clearly, the broad whys, I want to put them to put their life under a microscope, to analyze. So I want them to act like a microscope. But then I will choose a particular verb, such as discuss maybe, right? And then I will put it into a sentence starter. Discuss the similarities and differences of online and in-class learning could be a quick question. But examine any sort of pandemic from at least 4 perspectives: parents, teachers, the students, the transport system. And then the fourth one, I've got a range of thinking tools. These are cognitive thinking tools because this is cognition. We're the cognitive thing, which just means making sense of stuff or processing material. And so I'd use the extended PCQ. And in my little, thinking tools templates thing for whiteboards, each blank is preceded by an example. So I won't read the top part, but if I said, government to buy smart devices for all year to 12 students, discuss the proposal that the government should buy this. We're going to use pros, happy face, cons, not happy face, and questions. But what we're also going to do is put perspectives or factors, criteria. So you could discuss this, and like Baldrick's cunning plan, look at that, we've got 5 paragraphs suddenly. The first perspective is, what would be the effects on the curriculum if everybody had a smart device? And the second one would be, let's talk about student engagement and then maintenance of these wonderful tools and upgrades and staff development. And in terms of differentiation, you'd allow students to come up with others, and they can come up with 12 of them. But what would happen, you'd give them some information, surely, or you'd ask them to research. And this is the important thing, Karen, because my real interest, as with some of your other speakers, was gifted and talented. I was involved in that for quite a while. When you're talking about pros and cons, that is convergent thinking. And there's nothing wrong with that. Logical, convergent thinking, it shows you understand the text. But what makes me excited as a parent, and especially as a grandparent and a teacher, is the questions, because that's where you get the divergent thinking. And if you look at the questions like, the sentence stem is what if, or could, or should, or I wonder, and it would be interesting to know. When you listen to people responding or you read what they responded, you find out very quickly who your unusual thinkers are. And not just in schools. If principals use this sort of thing at a staff meeting, they would soon discern where the future leaders, future heads of departments and deputy principals and principals will be by the quality, or just where the very switched on teachers are, who allow these questions to happen, because you can't control this, because that's divergent, whereas you can control as a teacher the first 2. So there's the example, and what this tool does, it acts like a ladder. And I've actually got the real photograph of this somewhere in Asia, where there's 3 workers on the ground. The one guy is holding the ladder, but he's not holding it on the ground. He's holding it exactly like you see there.
Wow.
I mean it. And above him is the person, and there's wires all over. And if I see this as a metaphor for brilliant parents, brilliant teachers, principals, deputies, heads of department, coaches, music coaches, because the person at the bottom is going that extra mile, allowing the person at the top to achieve their brilliant best. And there's one word for this, well, I call it trust. And when you teach in a particular way and you offer kids or students or learners a tool, and you teach them, look at this verb and then select the right tool, those people will do anything for themselves and for you because they trust you. So if I say to you, discuss your life as a teacher and don't give you a ladder, where's that going to go? But if we go here, and I say, well, Eric, where's the general why? Well, it is analyze, all right? It's the analyze level. And then if I go to column 1, what verb am I using? Discuss or examine or analyze, if you like. It's over there, right? And now I know I've looked at the verbs now. Why are we doing it? Very clear in my mind. And then I go to the 3rd column. I make a sentence, which in this case is, discuss your life as a teacher. And I say, I'm going to give them that ladder, and I'm going to give them a tool from the how column, and there it is. In this case, the pros, cons, and questions, or the extended pros, cons, and questions. And there we have it again. And so what you do, once you've explained it to your students, you would project this on the board, and either you would give 1 or 2 of these perspectives or ask it from the class, because ownership leads to motivation. So if I give all the perspectives, well, Frankenstein owns it, not my students. Well, if I ask my students, what do you think is another way to look at it from another point of view? And then I give a little bit of modeling. I give 1 pro, 1 con, 1 question for subject knowledge, right? And then I ask my students to come up with a few ideas. And then I say, right, I want to drink coffee now. Off you go. And you've got 20 minutes in groups of 2, 3, or on your own to fill up. And that could be an A3 sheet. And then we're going to report back. Now, can you see, Karen, if that page is full up, who owns this material?
Yeah,
not the teacher.
It's very powerful, isn't it?
The learner, right? And then I can take it further. If I want to drink more coffee, I quickly add another verb, and evaluate. And evaluate, judge it. And can you see on the right hand, I've got the extent barometer. So Karen, you own Spectrum Education and you're running this online thing. So from 0 to 100, can you see the extent barometer?
Yes.
How fulfilled are you as the CEO of Spectrum?
Totally.
100%. And Karen, if I say to you, using this extent barometer, to what extent do you like washing up at night after a meal, if you ever do?
Oh, that would be 0.
Okay, at least you're an honest lady, right? But can you see for each of these perspective, which is a paragraph, if you talk about the pros of subject knowledge, the cons and the questions, and if all of that is generally positive, you would rate yourself in that little barometer, can you see for, paragraph 1, you'd rate yourself highly. And if after working through all of these perspectives, nearly all of them were high, you'd come to the general comment, in conclusion, therefore can be seen, that I really love being a teacher. I know I need to make some improvements here, but generally speaking, I would love to do nothing else. And there's an elegant response with the material. And if you hand that in, along with your written comments, your essay, let's call it an essay, or a report, it could be in a piece of art, a poetry, because you've got principles or perspectives of art and so on. It is the ladder. Let students or the learner be their brilliant best.
I absolutely love that. What it does is creates depth for the thinking, rather than just the first answer that comes to mind. It actually creates depth and authenticity to what the students are doing. So absolutely. Thank you.
I'm so pleased you say that, because as a teacher, too often I've asked questions and I get a superficial answer and I've let it go. Now I realize that I'm condemning kids to mediocrity by saying, well, what do you think of the film? Oh, good, Mr. Franklin. Oh, cool, sucks, whatever it is. There's no depth. Yeah. But if I give them this sort of, scaffolds, and I encourage them to be more profound, and I compliment, my goodness me, that's amazing insight. I would never have thought of that myself. And then other kids say, oh, I could do that, I can do that. And you just keep lifting the bar of your expectation to get depth.
And for teachers who are just starting out on this, it takes practice, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes. So, and with the frameworks, it makes it so much easier as well. But I see you've got a question up there, Eric, about do you use these differently online?
Well, that's the question. I'm not sure if I asked that or you asked that. And I said, there's no reason to be different, because just last week I did 4 webinars with principals in WA all over the country. There were only about 12 in each webinar. It's about an hour long. But here's the example. I used this, and they had this in front of them. They had their little booklets, so they had it printed. And they wanted to talk about high morale. So I said to you, well, let's explain it. I need to understand what is high morale, because I understand basically what it means. But what they were trying to do was to reflect on what had happened in the COVID period, when they were teaching at home, and then online teaching, and then now they're all back, as many states are now doing. So I put this up, and then I said, let me model so you understand. So this is called the 4-4-1-4-4. In the middle, you put the event, the phenomenon, drought, whatever it might be, floods. But here's high morale. And then I said, well, one reason why these football teams have high morale is that they have very clear HR protocols, human relations protocols. When that is clear, like signs on the road, I feel quite comfortable. And one effect is that as a result of this, people know where they stand. There's nothing untowards or surprising happening. So you would find, I'm not talking about playing staff, that's up to their managers, but the many more people behind the scenes than the players. And then I asked them, they were on their own, to come up with at least 3 more causes and 3 more effects. And then I said, right, once we've got that, what causes clear HR protocols? Because of course we're talking about schools, aren't we, as well? So schools that have got high morale have got very clear policies and protocols. But what's caused that? What do you think of the sub-causes? And very often you find that everybody has been involved. Young teachers, older teachers, office staff, and all that. They've been involved in the process of building up these. And then I said, well, what is the sub-effect of low turnover of staff? And can you see, to use your word, if I may, depth? Can you see how deep this becomes? Mm-hmm. And then you can start talking about it. You say, aha, now I understand what it means. Because you have to have reasons for something and results. Reasons and consequences, causes, effects, whatever you want to call it. And there's nothing to stop you making another what do you call it, column of 4 boxes before sub-effects and sub-causes and 4 more to go even deeper. And that's what bright children will do. They'll take it further. And that's what's so exciting.
And so you tell us about the explicit nature of this. So how do you go wider and deeper and broader with this to get the outcomes you're really looking for?
Yeah. So if I was writing this, I would ask them to explain the importance of the phenomena of high morale in an organization by using the cause-effect map, the 4-4-1-4-4. That to me is explicit. It's even more explicit, of course, and all teachers do this when you give a rubric, 4 criteria, which is brilliant. So they know what they're being judged on when you tell them how many words you want and the time. And it's even more explicit if you give an example or part of an example of the sort of depth or quality you're looking for. Because that's what coaches do in any sport. They will demonstrate what you know, the type of topspin, whatever it is that you want them to do.
Yeah.
So make it clear. It should not be a mystery because people will fail.
I'm just going to ask, because this could be a mystery, because I'm thinking how this is recorded. What is the last column? What is the word above that? Because I think our photograph is in front of that word.
Okay. From the left, it goes sub-causes, then causes, then events/phenomena, event and phenomena, then effect, and then sub-effects.
Sub-effects.
Sub-effects, yeah, sub-effects.
So
yeah, what people can do is to drag their little picture, you know, of you and me. If they grab it, they drag it to the bottom of the screen. It'll go along the bottom of the screen in a row, and then they can see the top right-hand corner.
Because this is recorded, I don't know that they can do that, but that's okay.
Oh, okay, I see.
So, yeah, so...
but you can draw it down as well if you want to. You can pull it down, I think.
Thank you. So tell us about why it's important to have explicit cognitive outcomes and purpose when you're in any lesson or assessment.
Well, a lesson could only be 30 or 60 minutes, and so you might only work on one level. You don't need a broad range. Excuse me. But if a unit is to last anywhere between 3 and 5 or 10 weeks, surely you're not going to, and I'm not speaking to you, but it's very seldom that you'd ask people just to retell and explain a certain thing. That wouldn't be the end of the assessment. Normally it's at the higher levels, whether you're using Solo, Marzano, Bloom, whatever it is, it's higher order thinking where there's some analytical thinking. So the end could be analytical thinking, or it could be analyzing and judging something, like should we go to the moon, or, you know, should we buy computers for all children? Or it could be looking at a situation where they have to analyze and evaluate it, and then come up with suggestions for improvements. So the final thing is the design one. You know, and what I've got over here, you know, why is it important to have a broad range? I'm not going to read that. But you attract more students, you appeal to more students. And by giving a very clear thing such as the extended PCQ, you differentiate the curriculum because the strugglers will manage at least 2 or 3, maybe even 4 paragraphs. I'm not judging this, I don't know. But your brighter students will go much further. They'll find more areas to talk about. And it's very important to get to higher order thinking because you own it. You can't own information. Information is information. There's no ownership there. And unless you come up with your own unique explanation, most understandings come from somewhere else, right? But where you do put your personality in is how you apply something differently. So I often think apply is part of higher order thinking. And then, of course, your analysis and so on. But the real thing is this, Karen, I've written it to mirror life. Life is not easy. All right. When I was a teenager, it was a lot simpler than it is now. I think it's horrendous for teenagers, how many decisions they have to make and how they have to analyze situations. You know, so I keep saying, don't ask them to think, because that might sound broad, but it's very dangerous. So you say, if you take this example, which I often use, now that might look like broad cognitive. What do you think? But it's not. Never do that, because it's all those are levels of thinking. What are you actually asking them? But I keep saying you can ask them to think about their holidays, and this is where we go broad now. I start at the bottom of the list, where I go remember, and I choose a verb such as list. So, excuse me, I just need a little sip here.
Is it Shiraz?
No, it's lemon from my tree. I've got a beautiful tree there. It's pure lemon and water.
Just checking.
Maybe later this evening. But listing all the things you did in the holidays, and then to help them, you give them an alpha ladder. A is for abseiling, B is for boating, and so on. And again, even that silly question, if you say, I want at least 20 answers, that's most probably worth a cup of coffee while they're busy. If you then say, I want you to think about your holidays by explaining what is the human body and not this machine. This machine can go on all time. It's a microphone. Why does the human body need a holiday? And you can use the cause-effect map. And there's another cup of coffee. And what I'm showing you here is a very simple template, if you like, for just about any topic. You could use these verbs and these tools, and showing how one seminal event has changed the way you think or act now. A flowchart, describe it. And then getting into higher order thinking for analyze, choose the verb there, discuss. I want you to think about your holidays by discussing a challenging incident with the extended PCQ. And there's must be 2 cups of coffee. And what I'm trying to show you here, that this is maybe 3 60-minute lessons, if not more, right? And none of these took me more than a few seconds to think about. Judging this holiday compared to the previous holiday. Decision-making matrix, one of my favorite tools, right? When I buy a car, which is not that often, but I always use a decision-making matrix. I might list 10 cars and go through about 15 criteria and have a score at the end. And that's the one I'll buy. Or suggesting improvements for your next holiday. Now, Karen, you see, when you sit down at the end of this with your management team, instead of saying, what do you think about holidays? You can say, what do you think about the TM online summits, the Teacher Matter online summits? And as a team, can you see, you could ask people to list all the things that occurred and then explaining why we did this online and why we did it now, and showing how one thing that happened to you, it could have been a good or a bad thing before, during the planning, or maybe after, affects the way you will change things in the future. And discuss a challenging incident that you had, some technical problem, who knows, a human problem. Or judge this to other conferences, because I've been in some of your conferences where you've had, I don't know how many people. I lost my voice, remember the one time in Tauranga. Judging this compared to another one. You might decide never to have a face-to-face, right? You don't know yet. And then suggesting improvements for your next online summit using Fresh, which is one of my strategies, or the Y chart, or the split Y chart, or going back to your extended PCQ and looking at the question column, I beg pardon. And from there, you might get a whole lot of new ideas for the next one. So can you see how you could use that?
Absolutely. I can see the value in helping my team to unpack it as well.
Yeah.
And so I can see that teachers could do that with students, that principals could be doing that with their teams, that corporates could be doing it with their teams as well. Yeah. It's it creates that depth and that authenticity to the original question, and getting people to actually do the cognitive work.
Yeah. So if anybody says to you, what do you think about your summit? You said, no, I'm not answering that question, but I've got 6 questions I could use, and then I'll answer it. But when you say authentic as well, Karen, what you're really saying too is gives a lot of ownership to the learner, to the people involved. And that's authentic.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that ownership is important. So what about selecting that stimulus material to accompany a question? So, you've got this question, but what now? Okay.
Well, next door to me, and I couldn't believe it when you asked me this question, because the week before last, JJ, he's my neighbor. He's a retired teacher. He does, what do you call it, tutoring for students. And, he asked me to help, and I got a little bit annoyed, not with him, but with the person who designed this, because I'll show you the question, but there was no stimulus material, and this was grade 7. And the question was, man should never go to the moon for scientific experiment, or humankind should never go to the moon. Agree or disagree? The question wasn't bad, and I'll show you it in a minute. But the teacher gave no indication, not even one example of one article even that the child could start with, an example of an article. And maybe that's good teaching, and maybe I'm being too much of a mollycoddler. But one of my favorite tools is this, the double bubble map. And it made me think, right? So at the top, of course, you've got Broome. And at the bottom, you've got one of my favorite towns in your beautiful country, which is Nelson. I love Nelson. So if you were to ask people, can you see it in the box comparing two towns? Compare town A, let's call that Broome, and town B, Nelson. What you do is you'd go through these brochures. You've got to have stimulus material. You can't just rely on the students' what do you call it, general knowledge, because it's not growing. But if they're forced to read a little bit, or YouTube, or whatever you want to go, Wikipedia, or wherever you find information, suddenly, can you see in the middle you've got similarities, on the outside you've got the differences. But you could take this further, because I've also got what I call the extended, or the double bubble map with perspectives. So I can use Broome and Nelson in the two bubbles. But I can say, I want to look at it from the perspective of the geography of these two towns, the social history of these two, the history of these two towns, and say the economics. Or one could be tourism, I don't mind. It could be more than three. And suddenly you've got, again, some depth. And understand that you could have 6 dot points in each of those boxes, right? Or you could have a separate double bubble map for geography, a full double bubble, one for social history. And again, each of these becomes a paragraph, and each paragraph has got the similarities and differences. And here's an investigation. So going back to your question, this is just analysis. We're not saying which one is better. It's just, this is the brains, and all of these, Karen, are storms, but brainstorm with shape. So graphics, the graphos, the words, know they have a place, or the phrases. So to me, it's so important. Yeah. So that's why I think it's very, very important that we do give people stimulus material, and you let them know if you find more of your own, you're going to do better. You cannot get a distinction on just the stimulus material I've offered you. That's a given. That's being explicit.
So when it comes to assessment, is it different?
Well, no. In fact, it should be even better, because if your rubric is very clear, and your rubric says, for example, I want you to compare these two towns and explain where you would rather go on a holiday, and you have to give at least, if you go back to this one, 4 reasons from a geographic point of view, 4 from a social, and 4 from an economic one, or tourism one, or whatever it might be, why you've chosen A over B, and you have to have it in coherent sentences, whatever your rubric is. That is the fairest. And I always encourage, I say, please, teachers, why don't you ask students, if you're suggesting something like this for an investigation, right, or the extended PCQ with assessment for analyze and evaluate, to hand in your rough work so they can see, can you see this? I'm embarrassed now. Who's the famous educator talks about visible learning? And you know him very well.
Ron Richard.
No, the other gentleman who came from your country and is now in, I hope he's not listening to this. He's one of the gurus. Hattie, John Hattie.
John Hattie, yes.
Sorry, Professor Hattie, Dr. Hattie, my apologies to you. I'm in a beautiful territory, what do you call it, climate at the moment. But he talks about visible learning as well, and this is part of that. You can see what the kids have done. They haven't just cut and pasted from somewhere.
I really love that idea that students hand in their thinking and their prior work and their brainstorming with the final product, because then you see it. It's theirs. You can see the shift and the change. You can see how they've structured it. You can even see how they've grown over that time. So I think that's a wonderful idea.
And to use your other favorite word apart from depth, it's authentic. It's theirs. They can see it.
Yes.
Warts and all, handwriting, spelling mistakes, it doesn't matter. That's their rough work.
Yeah. And so when our students are going into an assessment, or are there other ideas that you can help them to be able to get this depth of thinking?
Well, it depends where the journey ends. So if it is just discuss, Broome, or analyze, or compare and contrast, you'd stop at the double bubble map. If you say, where would you rather go, you might use a decision-making matrix. And I don't have a picture of a decision-making matrix here, but again, if somebody comes up with 20 criteria to compare these two by and writes about them all, surely that's a very, very in-depth, more profound, especially if they can justify through the scoring system why they chose A over B. You've done it all. Because again, why? I've got to ask myself, why am I giving this assessment? And what am I looking for in this assessment? So if it is critical thinking, needing to compare 2 products, right? And I want them to clearly tell me their, their decision and justify it. Each criteria becomes a paragraph. And this is wonderful logical thinking. It's progressive. I know it's linear, but it's how you handle the language that shows that you might be divergent in your thinking as well. Mm-hmm. And of course, some people would double the value of certain criteria, showing that this is more important.
Yeah. So
what it's simple. Sorry to interrupt. I think our judging criteria, I'm sort of retired now, nobody knows where I live, so I'm safe. We make it too complex for students. Ask yourself, what are the basic things we want? And let's go for that.
Yeah. I like that.
Some rubrics are very complicated.
Yeah. And I think the rubrics work best when they're co-created with the students as well.
Aha.
Yes. So then they have that ownership of it as well, so that they can see examples and understand where they're heading.
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
So can you give us some more practical examples of all of this?
Well, I'd answer this very question. You said to me, is it important that we teach these assessment ideas, tools, I beg your pardon, these thinking tools during class, not just at the assessment? And the answer is yes, because of course you people know what this cup is. I won't mention the word, but I will. It's the Gladysburg cup. You deserve it. But every rugby team, every sporting team, every dancing troupe, every choir, every band keeps practicing and practicing and practicing for the big one. And if you're going to use a decision-making matrix in your final assessment, we've got to get the children, our learners, to be using them for other questions along the way. Right. And you asked me for some practical examples, and I'll go back now to John Joseph, my neighbor, JJ. I think he's from Idaho, but he's been here all his life as a teacher, a wonderful guy. And he came to me the other day that a student that he's tutoring had to write this essay. You can read it, agree or disagree. And to this teacher's credits, and that's what I thought was really good about this, she said, in the rubric, in the assessment, these are some of the verbs I'm going to be judging you on. She didn't just give the verbs, she gave the definitions. And I applaud this teacher for this. There was no mystery. There was no assuming that they know what justify means, right? This is a 12-year-old child, year 7, 11 to 12. And then John and I, just a little bit of a brainstorm. Let's collect some data, get the student to use a KWL. And, what they maybe use an alpha ladder for what they know. And then for when I use learnt, I say, what's the big picture? So there are other voyages of exploration. And then I say, well, let's develop this argument using the extended PCQ with, oh, sorry, I noticed a spelling mistake. Imagine a teacher and a male making a spelling mistake. I know why. He's from Australia. That's all right.
You're human. It's good.
Assessment. I sound almost Kiwi there. Assessment. Yeah, that's right. Okay. But here it is. So there is what John has given. John and I worked this together, right? And he's going to ensure that student comes up with a few others. But there was no stimulus material, so they have to find some stimulus material. But can you see there are 6 paragraphs for this student? So in terms of the scientific data unique to the moon, now I don't know if there is anything unique there, because I'm not a science person. I'm not excited by science, all right? But that's my weakness. But if they do some research, there might be only one thing that is unique. But what is the cons? I don't know. It might be that it's only in very small supply and it's difficult to bring back. And of course, the questions, I just thought of one. Could we then look at the DNA of that piece of mineral and see if it can be made in a laboratory? Can we put it together here on Earth? That's not a bad question. I'll give myself a high mark for that. But can you see again at the end, we would then, if there was not much there, we'd give it a low barometer. We'd say, no, that's, to what extent is this a good idea? Not a good idea. But what we've done is given the students, and I don't know how John will do it, whether he'll give them all of this or draw some out, but we've given the student a very clear scaffold, a ladder, holding up the ladder for the person at the top, for the student at the top. And then in conclusion, it appears evident that, and the evidence is by all the dot points in the pros, cons, and questions, and to what extent these extent barometers have been filled in. If they're all low, you'd say, don't go there. Let's do something else. And that's what it is. This is not spoon feeding. Right? I play table tennis. My coach coaches me shots, but I've got to do the shots in the end. He doesn't hold my hand. Right? Okay.
Yeah. So actually, that's quite a nice analogy that we're giving them the scaffolding and the structure, but they're doing the thinking. And as I think about my mentors who work with me around extending my own thinking and my own abilities, they often give me a structure to think about or a process to follow.
Structure, process, yes.
To be able to get my thinking to a different level. Otherwise, we get stuck in doing what we've always done. And so sometimes it feels comfortable and it pushes and it stretches, but it actually creates that higher cognitive thinking in the end.
You know, every person in business knows what a SWOT analysis is: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And there's a good chance you most probably did that before you decided on this summit, or you used something like that. But no business person or intending to go into business person would start a business without doing some sort of thinking like that. And if I can get, I don't know, a little bit personal here, back in 1986, I was the deputy principal of a very large school. I was the housemaster as well. For the first time, I could actually take my family out to dinner, but it was a wimpy bar, something like a McDonald's. It wasn't a flash price. But I loved my teaching. I loved being a deputy. I was teaching 19 periods of history a week out of 45. I was teaching 2 terms of basketball, 1 of hockey out of 4. And I wasn't Superman, but we didn't have the paperwork that we have in Australia and no doubt in New Zealand as well. And I was a happy, happy person. My parents lived nearby. Terry's parents lived nearby. But we did a plus minus interesting because I'd got involved in the Bono stuff. And I used it as a deputy in staff meetings. And the topic was discuss the idea of remaining in South Africa. And I'm not hurting anybody's feelings. I'm just sharing my heart. I'm being honest. And we must have had 18 or 20 reasons to stay in South Africa, right? I'm not from South Africa. I'm a Hollander. South Africa was my 6th country. I've been in Indonesia, Malaysia, Holland, Kenya. I grew up in Rhodesia. That's my accent, all right? And I did teach in South Africa for a while. I taught in Rhodesia too, or Zimbabwe as it's called now. When it came to minuses, I only had 2 entries. The one was personal safety, all right? And I don't want to get into politics, but I had to inspect my school every morning at 6 o'clock to look for bombs. And I was not told what a bomb looked like and what to do apart from saying help if you found one. All right? So, and there were some horrible things happening. And the second was, and I hope I'm not offending anybody here, I couldn't see a real future for myself and my family. And I won't tell you what was interesting to know what schools are like. I can't remember. But based on that simple little structure like your coaches gave you, your mentors, so you said, we came here in 1987, and as I always say, I'm so grateful for Australia to have its low migration standards in those days, letting me in and my family in, and we have loved it. We are so grateful.
Yeah. So I think that when you look at people who have pushed the boundaries, they have structures and they have these ways of helping them to do that great thinking. So it's not just, there might be some intuition to start with, but we also need to delve down into that depth. So as we finish up, Eric, it would be great to, any final ideas, thoughts, things you'd like to share with our teachers?
Well, when you asked me the other day, I thought I'd just mention that, and I won't read these things because people can read. But I always think of the question, why? Why am I teaching this whole assessment piece? And this lesson, why? So what is the purpose? And you can only get purpose through verbs. And I like to, when you talk about metacognition, thinking about the cognition as thinking, processing, even with grade 3s, and I'm not particularly good with grade 3s. I'm lousy with grade 1 and 2s because I'm a high school teacher, but I manage with grade 3s. I show those pictures. So I'm asking you to act like a information kiosk, or like, you know, the judge, the scales of justice. So I keep asking, what sort of thinking, what do I want my students to act like? I will share that with them. And then I will use 4 steps. You know, I'll choose the verb. I'll be aware of I don't know how clear this is, but anyway, it's somewhere on my website, right? So I go to the second column. I know I want them to say analyze. Then I'll choose a sentence starter with that verb in, and I will include from the 4th column a thinking tool. So if you look at discussing your life as a teacher by using a SWOT analysis, is a pretty explicit question or activity or piece of assessment. So step 1, the verb is discuss. That's the task why. Then the step 2 is the broad why, is the analyze, acting like a microscope. Then the actual sentence, the question, you know, discuss your life as a teacher. Geez, that didn't take me long. I'm going to drink an awful lot of coffee while they do this one, and using a SWOT analysis. And of course, there's more there. There's the multiple intelligence, there's the cooperative skills as well. Because in the end, I keep on saying this teaching is so difficult. You've got so little time to reflect. So sometimes we don't reflect. We know we're doing all right. But if we lead our lives by this mantra or this axiom, we'll become complacent, and our creativity will die. Or not die, but go down. And I would rather live my life this way, no matter what I do, right? Even in table tennis, which I love, and I study some Italian and French, I'd love it to be even better. And I know that if I use one of these thinking tools as a teacher, my lessons will be even better and more coffee time. And I share this sort of thing as well. And I share this with my students, all these cartoons in my cartoon book. My cartoon, whatever you call it, the online, the one that you could, the digital one. So if you look at that. This is where, and you talked about depth and authenticity. And when you read these 5 things, and I often share this with students, that's what I say, that's effective. You don't have to be the top of the class to be successful. But what does learners mean? And there are some of the ideas there. And as a history teacher, I was a troublemaker. I used to lie a lot, right? And if they hadn't picked up the lie, I tell them, oh, by the way, guys, that was a lie. So then what happens, their Raz alert is, for the next lesson, watch out for Frankenstein's got another lie coming up. Because I want them to challenge me. And I share this. And I really mean it. When my students say, excuse me, sir, right? I disagree with you for the following reason, because you said this, and not get personal with me, but talk about the material. I know I've won. It's our classroom, Karen. It's not my classroom. It's ours. And I can't do that with just knowledge. But if they're working out a SWOT analysis and I've said something, it's A, and they realize it's B, they say, excuse me, sir, I disagree with you. And I love that.
It shows a thinker, doesn't it? It shows that our students are thinking and that they have that respect for you to be able to challenge and be able to have their own opinions.
Yep. And that's why I'm ending with this one. I go back to this one again. Because learning is a verb. It's an action. They're doing it. The teachers modeled it, given something, and now trust them. Stand back a bit. Because I've never seen in any sport the coach running next to the players while they're playing the game. They've got to sit in the sideline.
They do indeed. Absolutely. Thank you so much for those ideas, Eric. If you could unshare your screen, please.
Yeah.
That would be great.
And look, Karen, seriously, all the best for the rest of day 2.
Yeah.
And tomorrow as well.
Let's just talk about a couple more things before you jump away. So, Eric, thank you so much. The passion just exudes from you, and it's so simple, yet powerful, the things that you share. So that's where I really, really had you on my list for this summit this year. I want to ask a couple more things just before we finish up. But one of the things I do want to point out is that I do want to respectfully disagree on one thing, and that is the drinking of the coffee. I'm sorry.
It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor. I always say.
I know.
Because you can walk around and encourage, but yes.
Yeah. I'd rather teachers were being, I knew it was, but I just want to be really clear that we want teachers highly engaged with their students and coaching and learning and asking great questions. And I know, but I also say, never work harder than your students. And
absolutely.
The goal is to be reading the newspaper in the back of the classroom with your coffee. So I'm just worried that with all your techniques, we'll have huge coffee addicts of teachers.
And litigation.
Yeah.
Dropping hot coffee of a child. No, don't. No. It's just a metaphor.
So, Eric, I know that you have a special offer for the people who are purchasing the All Access package. And so tell us about the deal that you've got.
Well, I don't know if I've got it on screen here. From my book, I've created 3 digital tools. And you just order them online. They're very simple. They're actually PDFs, so I have to trust people. And then with schools, I can trust them. So what it is, but Karen, you will have a special a code. It's the one thing is called the Thinking Tools templates. And they're in color, and each one is preceded by an example. So you can show the example to your students. So once the school downloads it, every teacher can then take it from the G drive, put it onto their laptop, and use it during the day. And so there's, I can't remember, I think 33 or so thinking tools, such as a decision-making matrix with 2 columns and 3 columns, and all those tools from my book, not the cooperative ones, obviously, because they're not graphics. And then I've also got the same thing in black line masters without the explanations. So any teacher can just print off 30 SWOT analysis or whatever they want, alpha ladders. And my third one is called cartoon conversations, because in Reflections of Classroom Thinking Strategies, I have various sayings. It may not be broken, but could it be even better? And a wonderful cartoonist called Wolf Wildwood, called the Cartoon Professor. That's how you'll find him online. And you can even do cartooning, and that's what I'd love to do as a teacher. He's made these cartoons. So, and again, it's all in full color. So a teacher can shine any of those I showed you there. And on the next page, anywhere between 2 and 6 questions. So if a teacher's got, say, 5 minutes before the lesson starts, after, can I call it roll call? I don't know what we call it anymore. That's what I used to call it. The teacher might throw up one cartoon, show the question, right? So, for example, that one that says the best learning takes place when the teacher is quiet. I ask the question, what is the difference between teaching and learning? Or do teachers both teach and learn? And I ask people to do a think, pair, share, think for 30 seconds on your own, pair up for another 30 seconds, and then put up your hand and tell. Now, you could use these in classrooms and, of course, staff meetings. So those 3, they're on my website at $3.99, but don't buy them, please. Wait for Karen's offer. I think it's about $60 off. So yeah, I think you're paying $339, and you just download it straight. I've been in a school where they've done it, and then you put it on your G drive, and any teacher can use it. And I'd ask you not to pass it on to others, just to respect that. And it's a one-off payment. You don't pay yearly. It's $339 for these 3 tools.
That's wonderful and very generous to give.
You'll explain later how they can get that at a better price.
For those of you who've already purchased the All Access package, you will get access to that on Monday, and there'll be a link below, or links that are sent to you with all that information. If you haven't purchase the All Access package, please consider it, because not only are you going to save $60 on Eric's products, but all the other amazing deals that the presenters are offering, which will be well exceed the price of being able to sign up for the All Access package. And of course, the All Access package means you can watch and rewatch these videos and share them with your colleagues. So again, thank you so much, Eric. I know we could talk for hours.
Yeah, we have sometimes.
And so thank you. And for those of you, halfway through day 2, go and have a dance party, some snacks, some healthy things, so that you can re-energize your brain, snack on exercise, and go and watch the next video and gain some more wonderful ideas. So thank you so much.